Hello and welcome back to JLXP. MSI Rumble Stage, Day 2. G2's win streak has increased yet again. We are officially on G2 watch for how many games in a row they can win. Current standings of MSI, G2 4-0, RNG 3-1, EG tied with the two-time MSI champions T1 at 2-2. PSG 1-3, Saigon Buffalo 0-4. That's the day. You summed it up before we turned it on. The day of no upsets. But that doesn't mean it wasn't interesting, Mark. That doesn't mean it wasn't interesting at all.
It does also depends if you count RNG being T1 as an upset, because I think a lot of people actually would call that an upset, but I was mostly memeing.
Yeah, we had that conversation yesterday about you hating T1 and their fraudulent win streak, and then I asked you at the end, who do you think is better? And you're like, oh yeah, T1. They probably got this. But then they lose, and you made the saltiest tweet. If someone cross-posts this tweet to the Korean forums, you might just be banned from the country. Do you want to read out what your tweet was?
It's not salty, it's spicy.
Yeah, spicy.
So I said T1 : like they're the ones saying this. So when do we get to play against all these team subs like an LCK? And a lot of people read that as me saying that like T1 will like I don't know what people read it as, but I think they read it as me saying T1 didn't deserve their title or something, and they're like they beat Gen G with sub or without subs in the finals and stuff like that. And I'm like, I know. I'm not saying that they're not the best team in Korea. It's just funny. It's just a joke. All right. It's just humorous to me because they were the only team in LCK to play the whole way through without subs.
Yes.
And it's just joking about that. That's all it is.
Exactly. And there's definitely other people though that have talked about whether or not it would be like an asterisk undefeated. I mean, for one, it's undefeated matches instead of undefeated games. So there's already a little bit of you need to make sure your definitions are right. But then literally the fact that they were the only team that never got disrupted by COVID until 4 of them tested positive the day after the finals was something meaningful. I know, at least in the NBA, like you could argue to put an asterisk behind literally every year because something does happen that greatly dictates the outcome. But that actually makes me want to talk about the T1 RNG game first, since we're on the topic.
One quick thing about that, I would not put an asterisk on it just because like what happens a lot of the time. It's unless it's something that they did and they didn't do anything wrong. Yes. I think there's things you can. I don't think T1 did anything wrong this split. I think the undefeated streak should be talked about as an undefeated streak because you play the system you play in. It was only yesterday about comparing two different systems like they're equal when they weren't. Yeah. And then today, I think there maybe are some things you could criticize the LCK for in their decision making or KESPA or whatever about like the regulations they made about forcing people to use subs and like those situations. But that has nothing to do with T1. So like
I think
these are just separate things.
Asterisks for me would be reserved for basically cheating. Basically, like the Astros
some of the Patriots
Super
Bowls,
or I mean, even the Patriots Super Bowls are debatably cheating. They were at least fine. But that's a different fan brigade that we're trying to anger. Okay, the T1 RNG game was very entertaining, but it was definitely not what your traditional T1 versus RNG or your traditional LPL 1 seed versus LCK 1 seed game would look like. It was super, super bloody, super sloppy, and then also very close. To me, the ridiculousness of that game was T1 had the game won, and then there was a ridiculous Volibear soul denial steal that never should have been able to happen if they either just wait for owner to be down there to smite or just kill the Volibear without damaging the dragon to put it into smite range. That was an absurd sequence.
Everything that T1 did macro-wise that game was kind of booty. There were 2 bad Rift Herald contests. There were a couple bad Barons. I think maybe it was just one. I think there were 2 bad Barons.
So yeah, there were 2 bad Rift Herald contests, and then there was 1 Baron flip where they got hard aced.
They got the Baron, but then they got aced. Yeah. And then there was this dragon one. And there were just a couple other situations where their macro, while the ones kind of in control of the game, was not impressive. And I think even if they got that soul, like with how they were playing that game, I'm not even like that certain that they even win from there because it was such a sloppy game.
I think they would have. I know, so a 4 to 5 item Kaisa gets absurd, and that's what Gala was even before the soul denial. I think Hextech Soul is just like a little too OP on like Ezreal Zoe. I think T1 would have been able to win it, but I agree. And I also, Azael and Freak were saying in the cast, and I actually generally agree with this. Yes, it was sloppy. Yes, T1 did things that we're going to say were like into the moment. That's kind of who they are, though. I did a Telestrator segment during one of T1's games about how they start Baron with 5 people alive on the enemy team, like more than any team I've ever seen. And they did it in LCK semifinals. They did it in play-in against Saigon Buffalo, and they did it against RNG. And they're like generally good at it. They're generally good at like winning these flips, but they flip so much. They're like a really flippy team. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, Azael in the cast was talking about how last year they did like these Rift Herald contests, and everyone was raging about how no matter what they contested Rift Heralds, and like they just don't know how to sack objectives or like cross map. It feels like everything is, and that's kind of what their issue was again today. Like not respecting when RNG is going to be able to get the Rift Herald, not respecting that you don't keep your jungler around the objective. Like he's the one that recalls. Like these are just somewhat curious decisions that they've had for over a year. I mean, in different forms or one way or the other.
Yeah, I think there are elements of these decisions that actually make them good, but when you end up losing these games, you end up looking really dumb. Like a great way to break stalemate games is to take somewhat favorable Baron flips. Like if they see a window, they're just going to pull the trigger and go for Baron. And this time RNG was like pretty fast at recognizing it, and then they aced them afterwards. But I've seen them make that play a dozen times this year and have it work.
The funny thing is, and this is going to sound so troll, but like this is when best of threes is actually very conducive to encouraging a playstyle where you can take more risks, because if that goes bad, you have 2 more games to clean it up. And in best of ones, if you flip that, now it's just an L. And so like in that sense, their decision making makes it seems worse than maybe it is based off the systems that they're used to playing in.
I completely agree. And it's also, while I mean, this is like a whole other tangent, but flipping games, I think, is one really big way to win on the international stage. It's just so hard to practice in NA, because if you flip a game and lose to Golden Guardians, that's a problem. Like you can't do that. Or like when Golden Guardians is the last place team, I'm sorry to Golden Guardians, but like whoever the low tier team at the time is, you want to be able to practice those flips, which T1 did. I think it's actually probably still going to help them in best of fives that they're willing to pull the trigger on some of the things like this. Not all of the things. Like some of the flips are just dumb, like not having your jungler there to secure soul. But for me, like starting Baron with 5 people there is generally, there's something that they're really good at.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're good enough compared to their competition to win a best of 5 playing this way right now. I think RNG versus them is like, people are still going to debate who's better. Even in their losses, both against the other top 2 teams in the tournament currently, SKT has had pretty massive leads. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that they outplayed their competition for pretty large chunks of the game. So it's not like they're just getting skill gapped or anything.
Yeah.
So I think, as much as I am enjoying the is T1 overrated hype right now, as like
it is pretty fun.
Someone I'm an agent of chaos this tournament. Like I'm up in the middle of the night. I don't have any hopes for EG, even if they make bracket stage.
I was just seeing. Did you see that Munchables tweet from like back during LCK finals?
Oh, I'm necroing the fuck out of that if T1 doesn't win this tournament.
People watching this, there was a Munchables tweet. Oh crap, I don't have it anymore. It's been getting necroed, but basically he said, from watching LCK finals, T1 look mad overrated. And he just got annihilated. Like Joe Marsh was like, why don't you ask LNG and V5 how overrated we feel? And just like, he just got piled on from fans. But because that reaction got so big, it can flip back real hard right now with them being in 2-2.
It's what happened. I forget what tournament it was, like what year it was, but at one point Jensen shit talked Bjergsen and called him overrated. Okay. I think it was 2020 summer when they made the losers bracket run. I could be
Oh,
mistaken.
no, I kind of remember this. Yeah.
It was Jensen kind of shit talked Bjergsen.
Yeah.
And so then every match that
I was
TSM
there.
played,
Yeah.
I retweeted it because it was always relevant. Either it was unironic and he's overrated and not doing well, or he was smurfing and it was ironic. And I tweeted it after every single series. And this is one of those tweets where you can just quote retweet it no matter what happens with T1.
Yeah. Yeah. When you create tweets like that, it's not as magical as you think as the person who made it, but as everyone else, it's pretty good. What do you think of RNG though? We talked a lot about T1. I
think RNG is really flippy on the top half of the map. But their bot and mid is consistent. So I think they have the ceiling to win the tournament if the top half is working well. When Bin and Wei are not having their happy games, and this game is very indicative of that. I think like Bin just TPing it and dying twice and all that stuff. It's very scary, but like they still won this game because Xiaohu and Gala and Ming were so good.
Yeah, Gala is continually impressive. Like he's if this tournament was on 0 ping, he'd be even better, right? Like it's just he seems to position himself so well in these team fights, and like the fact that he's basically almost gotten 3 pentakills here, and the fact that one other thing that is a trend that I think we're gonna see a little bit more evolution of throughout the tournament is people are blinding Ezreal a lot, and it almost always seems like the Kai'Sa team ends up being more effective. Like you need to play these finessey team comps with Ezreal, whereas the Kai'Sa team comps are a little bit more face roll and go in, and these Kaisas are getting super fed. And I actually want to see a lot less blind Ezreal and more Kai'Sa like Gala's been playing pretty much the whole tournament.
It does feel like the bot lane meta has not yet been solved in a sense.
Yeah.
Lucian's been permabanned, and that's about the only. And Kai'Sa is good.
And Kalista like appeared in Rumble, but wasn't a part of groups.
Kalista has appeared. Jhin has appeared. Ezreal feels like the new one where people are like, "Is this fine to blind?" Because I don't think anyone knows what they want to blind right now, other than Lucian.
I guess that's true. So, yeah, there's not that much. Like the reason Ezreal's getting blind picked is there just doesn't you don't feel safe blinding a lot of the stuff. Otherwise, you're going to like blind jungle support, but support counterpick seems pretty valuable, and there's a lot of like you want to find recon angles and stuff. So, yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk about G2, like we said we would at the start of the podcast. G2 EG. That was only the 5th time they've won against EG. There were some best of 9 jokes, but ultimately it's just the one. It's just the one. Last stage doesn't matter anymore. MarkZ. How close was this one, in your opinion?
Not that close. They were in control of the game, but like they needed a couple plays to actually win it. Like they didn't get a Baron. They didn't like push in Hibs. You know, like they would have needed to win a handful of team fights. And while they did make a lot of good skirmishes, I think they're Vulcan. I love him, but he went back to playing. Like yesterday, I thought Vulcan was fine, and then today I was like, no, that was a rough game for him.
I didn't think they were actually that close to winning it at all, even though they had a gold lead and they had a couple dragons, because I didn't really see a path for them to actually win the game. Like, so they were playing a Rise comp, and from the moment they had like a 2,000 gold lead in the mid game to the moment Vulcan got caught in Baron River, which eventually led to the Baron death, they lost like 2,500 to 3,000 gold from just the map. And yeah, so if they're playing Rise, but they're hoping to like maybe win because they can kind of hold mid prio, that doesn't make that much sense. Both of their side lanes were like deeper than I've ever seen side lanes be pushed for like 3 solid minutes. They had no turns to make plays. It was just G2 getting the deepest possible push, then disappearing to fog, and then like Danny killing mid lane creeps. But EG like couldn't farm their jungle. They were dropping so many creeps on side lanes. It actually looked really hopeless to me.
Yeah, I think once G2 realized that they were getting out scrapped a little bit, they started, I feel like, playing the map more than the champions, and that's when the gap in the teams kind of became more apparent. I think EG can scrap them. I think JoJo has had a better tournament than people are giving him credit for. I think he's hit or miss, don't get me wrong, but that's always who he's been. And I think he's not a problem right now. I think
I'd agree.
They get outplayed in team situations, and their bot lane is a little sus, I think is where their problems are versus top teams. But they're competent enough versus the teams below them seeding wise that they almost never look in jeopardy of losing those games either.
Yeah, like their game against PSG today, that is another one. I mean, it's part of an example of why MSI is just this brutal tournament, because you're just playing the number one seed from all of the top regions every game, and you don't really get a break. Because they like soundly beat PSG, and they had solid enough macro, and then that win to me looked a lot like all of their wins in North American playoffs, where there would be an objective that PSG would start, or like a Team Liquid or 100 Thieves, and then EG would walk away with 3 kills and no deaths. And you'd be like, huh, cool. Like, they're just better team fighters.
Yeah, I mean, that one team fight in the one that they lost the game on for EG versus G2 was like...
Wasn't even a fight.
In hindsight, it was so obvious, like, oh, you're getting funneled into a choke point versus Ornn. This is going to go so bad. And EG were just tunneled on trying to save Vulcan and didn't really look at how the fight was going to flow. And then Caps just gets the fattest, like, double distortion. You're like, okay, they're better.
But yeah, to me, that G2 game was actually like less about that fight and more about the just like total control of the map that they had. I think some of that is through team comp. Like LeBlanc had death cap at that point, so no one wanted to go into a side lane because like a LeBlanc Wukong could just kind of appear. Because they had such consistently good deep push, they could just fog all the time. What about the G2 game against Saigon? That was actually one of the coolest drafts I've seen in a very long time.
All right, you take the Saigon angle first for why you like it so much.
Okay, cool. So for those of you who missed this one, even though it happened like an hour ago as of this podcast recording, but maybe you're watching the YouTube VOD, they did a big like double blind flex. So they had Senna in 1-2-3, and then their 4-5 was Vayne Vladimir, and they ended up putting the Vayne top and the Vladimir bot with Senna, which actually like straight up smashed the Ezreal Bard throughout the game. And then the Vayne was also free farming against the Scion. So both of their side lanes were just ridiculously good. And I just liked it because as G2, who's trying to 5-pick for Broken Blade, they knew that the top laner, Hazmed, had played Vayne. They thought he would probably play Vladimir because they were thinking Vayne into Ezreal would be an okay thing. But like to put that timer on Broken Blade of, oh yeah, pick a blind pick that works into either Vladimir or Vayne is just such an impossible answer to come up with a good response to in that time frame. And it ended up working. It's just the fact that Jankos got 7,000 kills off of TF mid with Ari Graves that the game ended up going that way. But I think if mid lane is a wash, I think Saigon actually can win that game because of the draft. What do you think?
I personally hate Vayne top as a champion.
Oh, really? Okay.
In competitive play, I've seen it so many times. I just hate it. Okay. It can't work. I understand that. Personal gripe against this
kind
champ.
Of like Lucian top.
Yeah, but Lucian top I at least think is like can contribute to fights without tumbling in. You know, like at least he has culling and like this like team tool to check brushes. Distance. Well, but like he can check brushes with W. You know, like he actually does things. And Vayne is literally like, I do damage at like close range. If I'm threatening you, you're threatening me. And it's just the most like skill intensive shit ever. And I hate it. But if you're a disadvantage, if you're the team that's the underdog, I don't hate it as much. Like I thought it was a clever idea. I like the idea of the Scion because they're like, we don't know what we're going to play. And Scion's always good. No matter what fucking happens in the game, it's impossible to make Scion useless. So like, I think that was G2's thinking, which made sense to me. But as you said, this was the Yanko show. In the comments in the previous episode, people were upset that we didn't give Yankos his due.
They were.
Two things.
We talked about all... Okay, I'll let you go first.
Oh, no. You go first, and then I'll explain my two things.
Oh, I agree. Yankos played really well on day one, and we didn't mention him. But we also mentioned literally every other player on G2 and said no bad words about Yankos. Like...
Yeah, for me, this podcast is not the fucking analyst desk or a Riot show. I don't give like I'm not going to give everyone their due, which is like what your job kind of is. Yeah,
As
when you're
on the desk a lot of times,
yeah, your job is to like inform the audience on like what's important. This is you and me shooting the shit at like it's 7:27. I've been up all morning. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to talk about what I'm interested in. Yesterday, I wasn't interested in talking about Jankos. He played Diana, good engages. Today, I want to talk about Jankos because he's fucking insane. His Graves was comical. Like how fed it was. Like it legitimately looked like a challenger in a bronze game, like where you just get hella fed and you just run around trying to put out fires around the rest of your team while your bot lane's dying or whatever. And it was actually comic. Like I was laughing watching his Graves just like ult someone for full health.
Yeah, I mean, Caps spoon fed him so many of those kills.
Yes.
Right? Like his first kill, he walked mid and pressed W and got a dark harvest proc. He didn't even auto attack. Like he just slid in and threw a smoke screen to a flashless TF. But after that, he actually
it was the greatest smoke screen you ever seen though. It was the most skilled good smoke screen.
That reminded me a lot of there was a Broxa play-in game against Peace, the Oceania team, where Jensen just like chunked the Peace mid laner Tally like 5 times in a row to like literally a hit, and then Broxa just came by and he was like 5-0 at 10 minutes, and I think got player of the game. And it was like, woohoo, we did it. Oh. It was a little bit of that because like once you get the gold, you just become this unstoppable beast. Their mid jungle was too insane. Like that was, I'd say for the 2 games today for G2, in the EG game, Caps Jankos played fine, but like Inspired got really freaking big that game, and JoJo was pretty effective, and they're like EG was actually winning those 2v2s, and G2 won that game through like macro. Even though like Vayne got obliterated by 10,000 gold Graves later in the game, I'm of the opinion that like both those side lanes were hard winning, but G2 just won that game through just mega power of mid jungle. So they won actually both those games in completely different ways.
Yeah, I would say G2's mid jungle is the best in the world based off this tournament.
Right now.
I mean, the reason I say that stipulation is because like I haven't watched every like regional series close enough. Because like there is sometimes where like the best mid lane, like there are times where Knight was arguably the best mid laner in the world and wasn't going, or Rookie. You know, like that stuff happens. So I don't want to say for sure because Chovy might be like, hey guys, what about me? I'm like, fair enough. But at least in this tournament, they're the best too. And they are the engine for why G2, like while Broken Blade's great and their bot lane is great, the mid jungle is the engine for why they're at a 24 game win streak.
Yeah.
They haven't had a bad game I can think of.
Tomorrow they play PSG, which from their post-game interviews sounded like they weren't going to take lightly. But then it's MSI, so everyone plays 2 games a day. Then they play RNG. I think that is going to be the end of their win streak. RNG. I just got a feeling. And the fans are going to hate it. You only hear cheers for non-RNG teams on stream.
Busan hates RNG.
They hate them.
It's just because they're not there in person to hear the cheers. So there's just save your energy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just being economical.
Part of it, I know there's a lot of other factors, but part of it is any other international tournament, there's a large Chinese fan contingent that like travels with the teams. But they can't. They actually can't. Like on top of it already being in like their biggest rival region, and all of the ping drama and like everything around the tournament, there's this extra factor that also their fans can't travel. So they're missing those little like LED RNG signs that you see at every event that has ever happened.
Yeah, so it's been funny with the Busan memes that Freak was saying during the cast.
The library.
Yeah, you know, it bothers people, and I don't get why. And maybe it's just my traditional sports background, but like I enjoy rivalry, and being rivalry doesn't like. I mean, I hope they cheer if they like win the tournament, you know, and they're like lifting the trophy. If it's silent, then sure, but like. You don't have to clap for the team you don't like during the game while it's going on. You know, like I don't watch people I don't like in sports do well, and I'm like, good job, keep it up. But you know, like later I'll be like, you know, they win the championship, you're like, oh god damn it, they're so good. But like Yeah, I don't know. It seems weird that people get so fixated on like, why would you cheer for your rival?
Okay, I want to know if this is a league thing or if it's a cultural thing. So I would love someone who's a big fan of like the Premier League to answer this question. So like the biggest European sport, because at least when this happened, the first controversy I remember of this happening was when the Cloud9 fans in Chicago booed Samsung in 2016, and
I loved it.
People online were furious, and like so. The response is generally you need to be respectful of the competitors and just like cheer good League of Legends. And there's a lot of League of Legends venues where that happens. Like specifically when we were in Brazil, like part of it is because the Brazilian team's always eliminated, but they generally cheer for everyone. French crowds are the same. They're just like loud for any good play. But absolutely from an American sports fan perspective, when there is a rivalry, you're booing the team you want to lose. And obviously T1 wants RNG to lose, so why in the hell would they cheer for them? But I'd like to hear from like a European football fan's perspective. Do you cheer good play in football? I don't think you do. I think you cheer for the team that you're a fan of, which is what's happening. But there is that dichotomy in League where there's an expectation from at least the vocal fan base that you cheer for everyone.
Yeah. And to respond to some people in Twitch chat, some people are saying, oh, well, the reason that they don't like them is weird because of nationalism stuff. Yes, but also LPL is the biggest competitor. Like they are rivals. If you did knock out the whole real world reasoning.
Twitch chat is definitely saying football fans are useless. They literally kill opposite team fans. So yeah, it's definitely a league thing. That's my gut.
Yeah. Because like, one, people say, oh, it's supposed to be a neutral venue. Well, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not. The same way, like when the tournaments are held in China, like the Chinese teams are going to get louder cheers. And like, you know, the Korean community, I heard cheering for a lot of other teams that are not just T1. They seem to cheer for G2. They seem to cheer for a lot of teams. It's just their rival. And like, that to me is totally acceptable. I understand that there's probably some nationalism going on.
Yeah.
And that I'm not going to agree with, but like, LPL has taken the title from LCK as best region in the world. So why would you cheer for them when they're winning in your home court? You know, like I wouldn't do that.
Go Tom Brady. I love the tuck rule. It's the best.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever Peyton Manning was there in Foxborough, I wasn't like, God, those regular season stats, man, keep it up.
Yeah, so many touchdowns. You're so good. 4 MVPs. Woo.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about?
I'm trying to think. I don't think there's.
Yeah, there are a few other games today, right? Like most of the like RNG, PSG games, and T1 games were stomps. So not focusing on those until it'll become relevant. It's still looking to me like the tournament is actually like what we expected, aside from G2 overperforming. It's right now like, if EG keeps taking care of business against PSG and Saigon, they're going to be in semifinals, which is like what their expectation should be. And then that gives them a chance to have a good day to possibly make finals. That's all it takes at MSI.
Okay. With that in mind, the way too early prediction of who do you want in semis then of the 3 teams? Because maybe G2 is actually fraudulent.
Yeah, I want
maybe
G2.
They're just on a hot streak. You want G2? You don't care?
Yep. If I'm EG, I want to play against G2.
Don't you have a mental block, or is that why you want them, because you have a mental block?
I think they might just get way overconfident if they've won 6 games in a row. And I know it makes it possible that they could win 9, but that's the angle, I think.
Ooh.
Throw it all out there anyway. Like, no one cares. And this is also from like if you have an upset, let's make sure it matters perspective. I've thought back about this a lot of times. Like when TL beat IG, the 9-1 team in groups, and then got swept by G2, for like the legacy of the LCS, it actually would have been better if they lost in 5 games to IG. As stupid as that seems, just so they didn't get swept by G2 after. So like NA teams have made finals before and it didn't matter. It's them losing to EU that matters the most. So if they're going to make it, it's got to be through EU. That's the only way it's going to stick.
I see what you're saying, because you don't think EG is going to win the title. Why not go through Korea and then have G2 lose to RNG and beat RNG in the finals? Then you beat the entire East.
True. That would be cool too. I mean, any EG title would be pretty cool. Let's. From the team that is literally winless against any of the former MSI champions all tournament.
It's definitely funny. There's just such an odd man out. It's like all these other teams have like one MSI. All these other teams sent their best mid laners in their region's history. Like all these other teams, and then EG is just like, "What's up, guys?
Woo! 4th place. Let's go."
Yeah. It's a funny event. So as much as I don't like the format, and I thought the group stage was painful, I'm enjoying it now just because the chaos that's going on between the top 3 teams. Like the top 3 teams, I think, are kind of carrying this tournament.
Yeah, I love watching them play. That's usually the appeal of MSI. It's like this super elite moment, and the things that actually make MSI the most exciting is when like Saigon and PSG start sniping games. Like those are the craziest days of MSI that I can remember. The more games that are pre-decided, the less exciting the tournament gets. So it's good because the top 3 are flipping, but like we get one more of those teams, e.g. Saigon or PSG, taking games, and we're in for like a hell of a final 3 days of groups.
Yeah. All
right. I think that's it.
Alrighty.
All right. So for those of you,
one final thing.
Go for it.
Did you follow the Yanko's Plumy stuff? Do you know anything about that?
Do you want to fill me in? I've seen it. I've seen the memes. It seems like Plumy's like mega popular now.
Yeah, I would say just watch the date video with Ashley Kang. She made it. It's really funny, and I can't do it justice. But basically, like they just met, and like they're hanging out. I don't know if they're dating or not or what.
Yeah,
but
they're not.
The memes around it are too funny.
Okay, I'll watch it and report back for tomorrow's episode if it happens.
Yeah, that's your homework. Your homework.
For those of you who are wondering about like watching the show again, if it happens, we will be live streaming on Mark's Twitch channel right after cooldown ends. It'll then get uploaded to the JLXP YouTube channel. If it doesn't happen, could be a number of things. Mark could have fallen asleep. I could test negative and leave. That's possible too. Or I could be feeling sick again, in which case I need to recover because I want to get out of this hotel room. So, but if those things, like if I keep feeling fine and testing positive and Mark stays awake, we're doing this. Those are the rules.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.